Hello and welcome to Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel. I'm Gail.
And I'm Michelle.
And today we are going to talk how to defrost a mouse and feed a snake. So Michelle, first of all, what types of frozen food are there?
So the main types of frozen food that most people will be aware of are mice and rats.
Oh, okay. And why would you use different types of mice?
So mice and rats aren't the only types of frozen food, but they're the main two that most people tend to use. There are a few other varieties available, so we've got things like quail, chick, if you're looking for bird sort of frozen foods, and then we've also got things like hamsters, guinea pigs, and something which is relatively new that's become quite popular within the last 4 to 5 years are something called multi-mammites, which is a type of African rodent. And the reason why we use different types of frozen food is because, like different items of food that we as humans, they're different flavours basically. So you may find that one particular animal may get bored or not like one particular flavour, so then we have to introduce different flavours to try and encourage them to feed. And there are different nutritional levels found within different types of rodents as well.
So it's quite nice that there's a lot of variety for the snake to have different choice and everything.
Yeah, some customers like to provide variety in diet and will feed different things at different times, and some customers prefer to stick with the same flavour food so that they keep that animal feeding and they don't develop fussy traits or habits. And at the moment there's no evidence that shows one or the other is problematic, so it's really down to your individual choice or the choice of the snake.
I see, okay. And what is the best way to defrost the frozen food?
So for a large percentage of snake owners, what they'll do is they'll get their food out of the freezer, leave it at room temperature. Depending on the room temperature, that will affect how long it will take to defrost and also the size of the food item. So in some cases, if you're defrosting something like a pinky, you may find in less than 40 minutes your food item is defrosted and ready to use. And some animals will feed off of it straight away. However, some animals won't, and that's why you're holding a cup for me.
Oh, okay. So what do we do with this?
So this is a technique that we can use to prep our food once it's at room temperature, and it helps with some animals that are a bit problematic with their feeding to encourage them to feed. So what we're going to do, what is in the cup is some hot water. You might be able to see by the steam that's rising up out of the cup. Not very much, probably an inch to a couple of centimetres at the bottom. And this is just a normal sandwich bag, and what we're going to do is we're going to pop that into the warm water at the bottom, and I'm just going to nip out a shot. Ta-da! And there's a Blue Peter moment, one I prepared earlier. So this is a defrosted mouse that's at room temperature, and we're just going to pop it into the cup. We're going to dangle the tail over the edge, and what I normally do is I normally just hold it like this. Now what I don't want to do is I don't want to warm up the stomach area very much. All I want to do is increase the temperature of the head of the mouse, which is what we're going to offer to the snake to feed from. And what this does is it brings it back up to similar to a mammal's temperature when it's alive. Now certain snakes, especially things like pythons that have heat pits in the front of the face, will use heat to help them find their food. Now when we offer something at room temperature, some snakes will go, I'm not going to eat that because it's not something I'm supposed to eat. But when we bring it up a little bit higher to that sort of blood temperature level, then they go, oh, that's my food item, and they eat it straight away.
So Michelle, is there a time period that you wouldn't feed the snake?
There's lots of different points throughout a snake's lifespan that we may choose not to feed, or it may dictate to us that it's not going to feed. And it's really down to the individual species. So some of the reasons can be things like brumation, also when an animal goes into shed, and also to do with the breeding cycles as well. So there are times when male snakes are far too focused on breeding to be worried about feeding, and there's times when female snakes just don't physically have enough space, especially if they're ovulating and producing follicles, to get food in there, and that can all affect feeding.
Okay, and how often do you feed the snake?
Again, it's one of those variable factors, so it depends on species, it depends on the size food that you're offering, and it depends on life stage, lots of different factors. Commonly, with a lot of smaller snakes, people will feed in the ratio of about once a week to once a fortnight, but with some of the really bigger species, it can vary quite dramatically.
Okay, and how do you actually give the snake the food?
Well, we're going to show you a little video later on as to how you do it, but one of the key pieces of equipment that you're going to need is some feeding tongs. So snakes are really enthusiastic feeders, which is great because it helps us, but the last thing we want is our hands anywhere near the food item when we're feeding. So these are great, and if you've got a larger animal, you might need a bigger set than these.
Right, oh, okay. So what happens if they won't eat the food?
Most important thing is not to panic. Snakes in captivity generally get far more food than they would in the wild, so they're generally of a higher body mass to begin with. All we can do is re-offer. Obviously, if we're offering food and it's not been taken straight away, then we can leave it in for a period of time. But if the food is not consumed, then it needs to be removed and binned, because obviously we can't re-freeze it or anything like that once it's been held at room temperature for a prolonged period of time.
Okay, so how long would you leave it in the enclosure?
So it really depends on the species and the size of the food, also the temperature that I'm housing the animal at. If it's a higher temperature species, I'd leave it in there for a shorter period of time, so possibly a couple of hours. If it's something that is not particularly high and the food item isn't anywhere near the basking spot, I may leave it in overnight to give it the opportunity to feed, because some snakes can be quite shy and movement can affect them feeding.
Okay, so just overnight then?
For some species, yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Now we have a video of a snake feeding, so let's have a look. Thank you for watching Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel.
Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another video. Bye!
Bye!